All right, so that's 10 o'clock. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting of Douglas Shire Council being held on Monday, 10th of August 2020 at the Mosman Council Chambers. I hereby give notice that in accordance with Section 277E of the Local Government Regulations 2012, that the special meeting of Council will be closed to the public because of health and safety reasons associated with the public health emergency involving COVID-19. For those that are inquiring, this is a state requirement and it's not a decision that has been made by Council. We only have a small room here, unlike some other councils that have larger chambers, and due to that it only allows us to safely have less than 20 people in the room at one time, appropriately socially distanced. Between councillors, required staff and media, that feels there are limitations. We cannot be complacent about this virus. Whilst it may not be in the forefront and present with us today, there is nothing to say it won't be here tomorrow, next week or next month. It is following procedures like this that will keep everybody safe in the future. The special meeting of Council will be available to view via live stream on Council's website and will be available for others to watch at a later time. I'd like to acknowledge the Kuku-Yalanji people who are the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians who may be listening or watching our meeting this morning. I see all councillors are present. Thank you very much. And we've got our CEO here, and of course, thank you to the staff. And there's no apologies for today. Any conflicts of interest that would like to be brought forward? So we'll go on to the agenda items as listed, starting from 3.1, Lot 83 SR 596 Cape Tribulation Road Sale of Land. The recommendation is that Council resolves to delegate its power to pursuant to Section 257 and 262 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to sell Lot 83 SR 596 Cape Tribulation Road to the Queensland Trust for Nature and Rainforest Rescue for the sale price of $725,000 exclusive GST. The purchase price Council paid for the land in October 2019. Authorises the Chief Executive Officer to delegate the exercise of the powers contained in the attachment to instruments of delegation to Council's legal services to act on behalf of Council for all sale negotiations and enter into the sale of contract on behalf of Council in regards to this sale, and to delegate authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to finalise any and all associated matters with this purchase. I'm happy to move this. If we could have a seconder, please. Councillor Scomerson. I'm happy to move this motion because it will allow two very accomplished organisations with the assistance and approval of Jababina to complete some very exciting environmental projects on this block of land. This block of land, while contentious in its purchase by Council to many late last year, has highlighted the need for further consultation within the wider community on their want for the environmental projects that this Council involves itself in at the expense of the ratepayers who are ultimately the ones who fund these projects. For me, this is another situation of a win-win for our Shire. Important and exciting environmental works can occur in this pristine area of the Daintree, and the money originally used to purchase this block of land returned in full to the ratepayers. Now, with a clean slate, this Council can look forward towards the community consultation that it has planned and get an absolute reading on how, what, where and how much our ratepayers wish to use of their money in this arena. With that, would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Zamatara?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kirk. Look, I'd just like to make some points. The Council purchased Lot 83, agreed to purchase on the 3rd of October 2019. And it was, I just agree to add, it was a unanimous decision by the previous Council. And the decision to purchase Lot 83 was made I suppose in part because a resolution by council to partner with Qantas in purchasing land to offset our carbon footprint was criticised by some. And look, the majority of the main reason for that criticism was because the land was not in the Douglas Shire, and this was prompted the council to make a decision to buy land locally, and we were successful in buying lot 83. And the decision was guided to an extent by council's own corporate plan, namely if you look at theme 3, titled Leading Environmental Stewardship. And in that, the goals that include were protect our sensitive environment, plan for the impact of climate change. We will implement programs that reduce and offset our environmental footprint. We will recognise the contribution that traditional owners make to the protection of the environment. The reason we've been asked to consider selling this land are all initiatives that were discussed by council as the reason for buying lot 83 in the first place. And these points include all the same in the report: the nature reserve, conduct nursery operations, engage with traditional owners, conduct ranger training and learning activities with Jubbabina. And they're themes that resonate with our own corporate plan. In the last 2 election campaigns, I've clearly stated my commitment to the preservation of the environment, my commitment to reducing council's carbon footprint. So I'm proud of the fact that I've not reneged on my commitments by agreeing to buy lot 83. I'll not be agreeing to sell lot 83 as this is a perfect opportunity, in my view, for financial gain by trading in carbon credits, and for one, showing leading environmental stewardship, which I think is part of our corporate plan, which we agreed to. We all agreed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zamatari. Any other councillors like to speak to this?
Yeah, I would. I just think, and repeating some of the words that you said, that it's a win-win for everyone. We're giving the parcel of land to a corporation that's going to put some employment back in for the local Jubbabina group. We're also handing it over to a corporation that's going to specialises in this area, and the ratepayers get their money back. It would be at least weekly that someone comes in my shop and asks me to sit down and ask what we're going to do with the block. I don't think it was a popular decision. So I think getting the ratepayers funds back, putting it into other areas of the parks, gardens, roads, etc. like that would probably be more beneficial. So I do support it.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. If there's no further comments then, Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. So I will be obviously speaking against selling this because I think we haven't actually explored all the different possibilities quite yet. There will be 3 parts to my argument as to why I believe this recommendation, in my opinion, is not the best outcome for this land. I will argue that this proposal does not fulfil the strategies, policies, aims, commitments, and yes, promises made by this council. I will also argue that this does not assist the people of Douglas to the fullest extent possible for ecotourism promotion of the Shire. I will also demonstrate how, in my opinion, accepting this recommendation will actually not be consultative on revenue raising possibilities for this piece of land. We haven't actually explored that very well yet. Firstly, how this recommendation does not meet our strategies, policies and aims. Let's look at the Douglas Shire Council Sustainability Strategy. At the moment, we're still utilising the 2017 to 20 strategy, but we are working on an update which will come later in this year. In the new strategy, I am having the assumption that the preamble, the aims, and the attitude would expect to be very similar. Now I'm going to just read a little bit of an extract from the current strategy that we use at the moment. The corporate sustainability strategy recognises council's commitment to the protection of the natural environment and the importance of developing and integrating suitable sustainable environmental practices across council operations. Now there are 6 strategies or principles. 1, preserve and restore the natural environment. 2, utilise resources efficiently, and I'm going to add to that, this means the best possible outcome. 3, protect and enhance the biodiversity. 4, monitor and reduce council's environmental footprint. This is our strategy. Number 5, strengthen council's resilience to climate change. And 6, display strong environmental leadership. Furthermore, in an extract from the plan, it is stated that climate change is a change in the pattern of weather and related changes in ocean, land surfaces and ice sheets occurring over a period of time. Council is committed to playing its role in the mitigation of climate change by monitoring and reducing its environmental footprint. It's there in black and white. It also says in this strategy that Council will do this by calculating a carbon footprint baseline. Calculating a carbon footprint will then help Council to quantify the impact that our operations have on the natural environment and will provide a benchmark for future reductions. In addition, it will help Council to identify and prioritise effective opportunities to reduce its environmental impact. It's written into our strategies, it's written into our corporate plan, as Councillor De Macaro said. Theme 3, our corporate plan says, and that's valid for another 4 years, says we are leading environmental stewardship. Goal 2 says we will implement programs that reduce and offset our environmental footprint. Okay? We're not doing this if we sell this land. That's the first part of my argument. Secondly, I believe we will be ignoring a huge opportunity for revenue opportunity for Council. A little bit of extra history added to what Councillor De Macaro said. The land was purchased by unanimous decision. Now, when the idea of the land to be purchased was first discussed, QTFN was always part of that discussion. Don't think that they're Johnny-come-latelys, okay? And QTFN always talked about being able to have some kind of input into the cost of the land. So the recovery of the land cost was always part of the equation, and that was something that made me very excited about being able to purchase this land. The original letter from QTFN, or the original, I should say, statement in general from QTFN, said they would like to contribute financially, in whole or in part, to the purchase and rehabilitation of Lot 83. In the understanding, this is part of a revolving fund to replicate Lot 83 acquisition and other appropriate sites in Douglas and possibly elsewhere. The offer did not preclude Council using part of the land, and so Council does not have to sell to make or receive a benefit.
We're at 5 minutes, Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Mayor Kerr. I appreciate that this is as you said, was a contentious issue, and I'm glad that you'll allow me to continue. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, we haven't actually explored the idea that there might be a possibility to rehabilitate the land and have a revenue raiser. Carbon credits, we haven't explored everything there, is actually a way to make money. And we as a council, if we sell the land, we cannot look at the possibility of making revenue. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the environment and Douglas Council's stewardship and how it's one of the 5 pillars of our corporate plan. In short, I believe, not only me, everyone believes that Douglas is the environment, and its environment is what makes Douglas special and unique. I'm going to read out a few media releases from this council over the last 2 years. An eco-tourism wave could help council, shire, businesses and tourism operators tap into rapidly growing international markets. This is from 2018. Douglas Shire Mayor Julie Loy said the tourism industry needs to commit to the highest possible environmental standards to make the most of this. International visitors want more authentic and sustainable travel experiences, she said. Everyone knows Douglas Shire has a strong environmental charter, and now we have a real chance to beam this across the globe and draw more visitors in. Eco Accreditation is a clear and recognisable brand that shows the world we practice leading environmental standards. TPDD Executive Officer Tara Bennett said that global tourism wholesalers reported an increase in demand for sustainable and authentic experiences used in their clients. These sellers are now actively looking for the Eco Accreditation brand. Now, as we all know, in December of last year, not that many months ago, the Douglas region became the world's first destination to be awarded the Ecotourism Australia Eco Destination Certificate. The Eco Destination Certification, through its rigorous auditing process sets the Douglas Shire and its unique natural experiences apart from everywhere else. To become certified, you have to meet a minimum of 80 of 100 criteria, and you have to keep that criteria going. And part of that criteria is continued initiatives and carbon reduction. But don't just take my word for it. Just a few days ago, the Queensland Treasury Corporation, this was on Thursday of last week, said this, and I quote, that ongoing underinvestment in national parks and other protected areas was not sustainable. It harmed conservation efforts and cost tourism sector potential visitors worth up to $3.3 billion a year in Queensland and create 8,000 new jobs. This is quoted from Queensland Treasury Corporation. In terms of rebuilding Queensland's economy, and particularly the tourism industry, our biggest asset is our national parks, our beaches, our coastline, the outback, and places such as Cape York, the Daintree, and Leamington. So the experts say that ecotourism is worth billions and worth looking after. Furthermore, to sum up, I would say that actually, I believe we are contradicting a rescind motion put forward by Councillor Kerr. The rescind motion said that no further action occurs on the land until the completion of the Daintree Ferry consultation and the council community carbon position consultation. Both of these are proposed in the 2021 operational plan. Now, this has not happened. So we are putting forward, we put a recommendation in front of us that actually contradicts a rescind motion and actually contradicts our own operational plan that was adopted 6 weeks ago. The operational plan states very clearly, following community consultation on council's desired position for managing its carbon footprint and outcomes from the Daintree Ferry, then we consider options for the land, including revenue generating activities and potential sale to interested parties. If we accept this recommendation, we are actually, I believe, possibly in breach of our own council resolutions. I think this is a question that must be discussed further. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Just in response to some of those things, there was a motion part of that actually said that we can sell the land as well.
After we did other steps.
And just regarding your comments regarding the sustainability strategy, the sustainability policy, the environmental policy, and there's two other ones that come to mind that this council rules under. If you have a look at the consultation section, you'll see that there was no public consultation done on any of those documents. It was all internal, and that's one of my big concerns, and this is why we're going out to the public consultation later this year to get a proper position. I'm going to put it to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion? Councillor McEwen, Councillor Scomerson, Councillor Kerr. All those against? Councillor Nolly, Councillor Zamataro. The motion passes. Right. 3.2, trustee lease to Public Safety Business Agency on behalf of the Kimberley Rural Fire Brigade, Lot 85, SP 219631 Forest Creek Road. The recommendation is that council offer a trustee lease to the Public Safety Business Agency on behalf of the Kimberley Rural Fire Service over part of Lot 85, SP 219631 Forest Creek Road for the term of 10 years from the date of execution, utilising the terms and conditions of the standard terms and conditions document registered under the dealing number 7179400164, and also the state's mandatory terms document registered under number 71193293. Lease payments to be $150 per annum plus GST with annual CPI increases as per lease. Pay all reasonable costs associated with the lodgement of the lease and documents of the Title Office, and delegates authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to determine and finalise any matters associated with the execution of the trustee lease. If I can have a mover, please. Councillor Nolly, seconded by Councillor Scomerson. Councillor Nolly, would you like to make any comments, please?
No, I think this is good recommendation.
Anyone against the recommendation? Any other comments from councillors? No, with that, we'll put it to the vote then. Sorry, all those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. You're too quick. I thought you were about to ask a question. Okay, so 3.3, request for negotiated decision notice for Daintree Water Bottling Facility. If I can have a mover on this one, please. I'm happy to, Councillor Nolly, I'm happy to second that one, thank you. Councillor Nolly?
I've got some questions I wouldn't mind working through, please. Now, I will apologise if these questions have been asked in other meetings, as you know, I wasn't here, so if I repeat something, my apologies there. I suppose it does talk about the two conditions in here. The condition that talks about 17, heavy vehicle movements. Now, my understanding is that the applicant wishes to go from 7 round trips a week to 10 round trips a week. That's correct, isn't it? So in total, it's only the 3 round trips extra, which then brings me back to the. Okay, so I would assume that means that the extra water that they can move out is actually not that much more in total per year. It's approximately half as much again. So if we then go back to the condition that talks about, is it condition 5 that talks about condition 9, beg your pardon, that talks about the production. The applicant wants to completely remove that. So, but essentially, he's still limited, or the applicant is still limited by the total tonnage. It would go from approximately 200 tonnes to, at the most, 300 tonnes, because you're only allowing that 3 extra round trips per week. Is my reasoning correct there? So if my reason is correct, why can't we just change the tonnage there as opposed to eliminate it altogether? So is that correct? So you go from approximately 200 tonnes a year to about half as much again, 300 tonnes a year. So he still have a lot of limits. So why can't we just leave it in there, just up it a bit?
Through the Mayor. Essentially, it's not that assumption's not really correct. We're not limiting it, and we're agreeing to remove this condition in full because the overall production will be limited by the vehicle movements, the size of the facility itself, and the hours of operation, as well as the 10,000 litre a day limit, plus whatever they can take out of the ground with the bore. So those other aspects and conditions will regulate the overall production, because what we're ultimately doing is regulating impacts on amenity. We're not regulating how much they can produce, because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect anything.
Yeah.
So that's why they'll be producing thousands of tonnes per annum, and essentially it'll be whatever they can fit in those trucks per week with those additional 6 trips per week. So
yeah, so that's right. So it would be thousands of tonnes. It wouldn't be just that 300 tonnes. Okay, thank you.
correct.
That's the question I have.
Anyone wishes to speak against the motion?
I'd like to ask some questions.
So no one speaking against? Yes, Councillor Zamatari?
Look, am I reading it right that if the production exceeds 200 tonnes per annum, it then triggers a new development application? Is that correct? We'll have to go to high impact industry land use. Is that correct from what I'm reading?
Through the Mayor, no. Initially, that was our advices and our position to the applicant in the early stages of I guess, the DA, and then that was why we threw this condition in that limits them to 200 tonnes. But they've made representations and formed a strong argument to demonstrate that doesn't actually create a threshold that defines a new high impact industry land use. So we've looked into the overall impacts. When you look at the land use definition of high industry, that's where you're creating a whole host of off-site impacts, emissions, noise, odours, all that kind of thing, where you're milling steel, for example. But when you look at the definition of medium impact industry, which is what we've approved, limiting that by a production quantity of 200 tonnes is not reasonable. So we've chosen to accept that this increase in overall production reasonably keeps the land use defined as medium impact industry.
The reason that this was deferred was there were some answers that I just wasn't comfortable, I wanted, and council agreed to defer it. And there's a few points here that sort of say, applicant has not specified the actual intent for overall production capacity. But then it goes on to say the volumes extracted by the facility are not expected to detrimentally affect groundwater supply. So are we talking about what they're going to extract from our supply, or?
Through the Mayor, no, we know, and we've conditioned what they can take from our raw water supply, but we don't know exactly how much they'll be taking from the ground. But it's not a particular issue. We don't consider it a particular issue because the state government who would regulate that doesn't have any particular requirements in the Daintree region. It's not an area that they see concern with, taking water from the ground. It's not like Southeast Queensland, for example. So within the limits of hours of operation and overall heavy vehicle movements, it wouldn't be considered reasonable to try to limit that further. But, when you're in an area with an abundance of groundwater.
There's a few points just concerned. The water quality has not yet been determined. So we don't know what limitations or what water is going to come out of what treatment is going to need. That still hasn't been determined. I would imagine as a council we need the answers to that before we can consider this proposal. Another point is still exploring the market for the most environmentally friendly packaging. We don't know does that mean, we're going to pass this without knowing what we're going to be putting back in the system. As a council, we're trying to eliminate single-use plastic. Do we really want to contribute to the landfill? It's already an out of control situation. That's my concern. I think I want answers to that before I consider this proposal.
Through the Mayor, I guess, so you've got two questions there I need to address. So the first one is around treatment processes, and the applicant hasn't determined the actual process and the equipment required because they need groundwater samples for the board to determine what processes are available, because there's so many when you consider water treatment. So you need to understand what's coming out of the ground before you can look at how you're going to deal with it. Now, we haven't conditioned anything around that because ultimately we still have the Environmental Protection Act, which regulates overall impacts. So the applicant still has a general environmental duty not to cause environmental harm. Now, I guess in terms of their responsibility there, we also have opportunity to regulate them by way of the annual food licensing inspections that council's environmental health officers will be undertaking. So when they go to site every year, they'll make observations, and if there's anything that raises concern, they're also the officers that are responsible for enforcing the Environmental Protection Act. So we have that control in place, I guess. I guess the second part of your question there was about the packaging. Now, they don't, as per the report, the applicant doesn't have a supplier yet. They're still sort of in negotiations. I certainly see a concern in terms of, we're trying to get away from single-use items and plastics in particular, and, support more sustainable outcomes. Ultimately, the issue is that there's not a great deal of particularly recyclable products in the market. So you have two issues, I guess. There's pretty high standard biodegradable packaging that they're considering, but that you can't recycle those. And then there's also those other types of packaging which have a high percentage of recycled product within them, which they may be able to use, but none of it's a great outcome. There's good aspects. But the other thing is, I don't think, from a planning perspective, we shouldn't really be going down this path because it's not a particular planning issue. And we also have all these other suppliers vending packaging in all of our other shops, which is plastic. So if a local operator is trying to start up and create a slightly better outcome, then it's probably not something that we need to try to regulate too much further. But ultimately, it's not really something we would go down as far as planning conditions. So
I understand it's not, but I understand it's not a planning issue. That's my concern, that we could end up with putting water into anything.
Yeah, through you, Madam. There's a lot of unknowns with packaging too. We don't know the markets that will be sold into. Hopefully selling to a market that can deal with the type of packaging that they want to use. Put a comment in the report about the packaging that was being considered. That certainly doesn't work in our current local Cairns region, council region recycling industry, but there's a lot of unknowns in regards to the market, as Dan mentioned, with the bore and the water, there isn't a bore, there's no water results. Ultimately, they will be licensed as food production under Food Act 2006. If they don't meet the requirements of that, then they'll ultimately be limited to the 10,000 litres a day that they can take to council. So there are a lot of unknowns there, but they're not things able to be conditioned in.
Yeah, to me, they're unknown. I can't make a decision without first knowing the answer to them.
Any other comments from councillors? No. I think it's worth noting that this was approved, and this is a negotiated decision with some amendments made to it, and these points that we're bringing up now aren't part of any of the amendments, are they? So everything, all these amendments are different points that we're quite happy with the results of, I think.
Oh, the water usage and the trucks, I have no issue with. It's coming out of Daintree. I've spoken about before. It's extra 3 trucks coming out of Daintree. They're cutting cattle, I have no problem with that side of it.
So with that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor McEwen, Councillor Scomson, Councillor Nolly, Councillor Kerr. Those against? Councillor Zamataro. The motion passes. All right, thank you very much. I think that concludes the open session for today's session. We do have a closed session item, Prudential Matter S2751D, Local Government Regulation 2012 Rates Concession.